Sonic always seems to divide people. It's Sonic or Mario, it's 90s Sonic versus modern Sonic. Either you love the blue fuck or you hate him. But more recently on the internet, I've been seeing a new divide. Is Sonic Adventure a good or bad game? While any video game that has ever been released has had its legitimacy debated online, it seems this 1998 Dreamcast title continues to be a source of active online discussion and contentious quarreling. But why though? You see, when Sonic Adventure first came out, it was lauded for its impressive visual detail and high-speed gameplay. Computer and Video Games magazine even went on to say Sonic Adventure is one of the best games ever made, in the same issue as this Lara Croft centerfold. So obviously, the Dreamcast release of Sonic Adventure must have been an achievement at that time. But as I'm sure you already know, the Dreamcast was fated to die within the next few years. And here's where it gets interesting. The re-release of the game, Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, which was supposed to be an enhancement of the original game, was eaten alive by reviewers around its 2003 release. It was known as a buggy and sloppy port that was nearly impossible to play without running into some kind of glitch. And again, years later, when the game was released on Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network, Sonic Adventure DX received harsher critical reviews. Suddenly, the 5-star game had become more of a 2 or 3-star game in the mind of reviewers. So it's no wonder that people find this game so dividing nowadays. When you mention Sonic Adventure, you're talking about both the beloved original and the reputation-tarnishing re-releases. People may as well be arguing about completely different games at times. And now I'd like to get in the real meat of this video. Looking through a lens indifferent to the game's troubled releases, let's take a look at the base game of Sonic Adventure and really see what's so divisive about the game itself. Once we're done, we can put it all together and see what we get. In Sonic Adventure, you play as 6 different characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Robot, and Cat. Cat is voiced by Duke Nukem. All the characters have their own unique stories that tie together to paint one overarching plot. They also have their own unique playstyles that we'll get into a little later. The basic story is that Eggman is attempting to gather the Chaos Emeralds, the almighty power MacGuffins, to soup up an evil water monster known as Chaos. It is up to our heroes to take him down while learning the history of this monster and discovering things about themselves. Well, some of them discover things about themselves. You see, the thing about the stories in Sonic Adventure is that they're a real mixed bag in quality that only loosely tie together in the end. Sonic is doing everything he can to stop Eggman and his Swooge buddy. Knuckles just wants to put his shattered mineral back together. And Amy just wants to protect a bird from a robot. Not to mention Big, who literally just chases after a frog the whole game. These have nothing to do with each other, and while all the characters meet and interact, and hell, the overall story does feel complete at the end of it, there's almost no time in any individual story that evokes real emotion or impact in the player. This could primarily be due to the poor animation and delivery of the cutscenes. These story scenes did not age well at all, and Sonic Adventure DX only made them harder to look at, though it provided a new skip button. The characters are stiffly animated and do not emote well. Any tense moments just come across as missed opportunities because of this. The only story that really seems to have any emotional effect is the story of the robot Gamma. While the poor cutscene direction detracts from most characters' stories, Gamma's stiff animations complement his character. In his story, Gamma, who initially works for Eggman, turns on his robot brethren in an attempt to rescue the Flickies, or birds, inside of them. After destroying the other robots and freeing the Flickies, he self-destructs and releases his own bird to become friends with the other freed birds. This is a gross oversimplification, of course, but it's still miles better than catching a frog. I wish I could say that about all the characters' stories. There really are some unique and interesting plot threads going on in Sonic Adventure. The flashbacks where you meet Tikal are legitimately interesting to me, conceptually. It's their executions that make them feel odd, being thrown in at bad times with poor execution. I can't stress that enough though. There are good ideas in the story for this game, but due to one reason or another, they were never implemented well. And I feel that reflects the overall presentation of the game. With campy cutscenes and poor animation, Sonic Adventure isn't doing anyone any favors. Character result screens are a great example of this, with their flailing motions that are often hard to follow. Moving on, the music in this game is surprisingly fantastic. Each track is tight and lots of fun to listen to. Jun Sonoi's use of guitar and synth-heavy background music complements Sonic and Friends' playstyles wonderfully in most cases. That said, I do have complaints about the song's uses in cutscenes. Listening to each character's theme song during most scenes does not always complement the mood well, and starts to become very repetitive. Don't get me wrong, I honestly adore these tracks. Listening to the full vocal tracks over the credits is a great reward for beating a character's story. So, to be clear, I love the level tracks and the overall soundtrack, but I feel the cutscene music is not implemented cleanly in every scene. And now we've gotten to the gameplay. Sonic Adventure's gameplay is divided into 6 characters with unique abilities and level goals. Each character has action stages and adventure fields to explore, as well as chow they can take care of. In an action stage, you run through a level collecting rings and trying to satisfy the level's objective. Most characters have one kind of objective. For example, Sonic just needs to make his way to the end of the stage. Knuckles tries to find randomly placed emerald shards, and Big catches fish. Why though? These levels are the meat of the gameplay, and honestly, they're extremely satisfying. Even Big the Cat, whose levels are just short fishing minigames, is responsive and controls nicely to me. Sonic, being the main focus, is a huge amount of fun to play. His assortment of moves all flow together smoothly, allowing you to speed through each level's complex geometry and challenges with ease once you've gotten a hold of the controls. For an early 3D platformer, Sonic Adventure's gameplay is an enormous amount of fun. The set pieces and challenges you run past are all unique and always satisfying to run through successfully. The free-form approach to movement is something I wish more games would try out. You can spin dash jump across a large gap that you can't normally cross and be rewarded for your trouble with a small power-up or a shortcut. Things like that are always welcome. That's not to say the gameplay is perfect. Some moments like the Lost World level's puzzles can break momentum and punish you for trying to rush through, something you're encouraged to do everywhere else in the game. I also find Amy's very slow until she gets to her top speed, which can then be too fast to control in her corridor-heavy levels, and while Big is largely an inoffensive addition to the game, his fishing gameplay is often cited as a huge, unnecessary addition. While those are all just specific problems I have, I would also like to give a moment's attention to the bugs in this game. Fortunately, there do not seem to be any game-breaking glitches, just minor annoyances scattered about. Unfortunately, Sonic is a little bit too fast sometimes. He has a habit of just slipping through walls, and during some high-speed moments, it can be best to let the level guide Sonic rather than to push up his speed and risk a life from an unfair fall into the abyss. This is more of a problem in DX, but it's still a problem in the original to some capacity. Anytime you have a pipe Sonic can run on the roof of, he has a habit of getting stuck in the ceiling geometry and running in place for a moment. This is very short and minor, but on repeated playthroughs of levels, this can become an unavoidable major pain. And repeated playthroughs are an important element of Sonic Adventure. Not only are you given a number of different missions upon revisiting levels, but you'll also be collecting small animals to be giving to your Chow. Chow are small, childlike life forms that you can take care of in Sonic Adventure. You hatch them from an egg and you can raise them up to be adults until they eventually just fucking die. Or they're reborn, if you're nice to them. You give your Chow the small animals that you collect during action stages to upgrade their stats and give them certain physical attributes like paws and fins. There's a ton of things going on here, but that's the very basics that you need to know. There are entire forums dedicated to these little guys, and While you can completely ignore them and their mini-games, they're a fantastic distraction that complements the adventure fields. These adventure fields are our last bit of gameplay content. They're large, open areas that you traverse to get to your next story trigger. They're honestly largely inoffensive, at times a bit amusing, but mostly they're just there. I do understand their inclusion though. Sonic Adventure is an adventure. Having all these adventure fields feeds into the large story the developers were trying to craft. Unfortunately, they have very little actually going on in them, making them very dull and a bit of a pain to traverse at times. New players will find themselves lost constantly, especially if there's a hidden upgrade they need to find. There are little hints scattered about to help point you in the right direction, but sometimes these can be vague and people like Aaron Hansen can't be expected to dissect complex riddles. Okay, so I feel like I've covered nearly everything about this game. Honestly, I may have been a bit too detailed, but this is all in the hopes that we can actually decide if Sonic Adventure is good or not. So far, I have been vague on my opinion on this game in an attempt to allow you to form a sort of opinion yourself, but now that's going to change. I enjoyed Sonic Adventure. It's a game I spent a lot of time in as a kid, and I personally find it just an entertaining time. That being said, I'm not ignorant of its flaws, and while I find the game to be good, I rarely find myself returning to the story or ever playing Big the Cat stages. But again, that's just my opinion, and I'm sure you have yours, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Or above if you're from the future and they fucking moved them above. That would be stupid, huh? Anyhow, thank you for watching my long-winded analysis of this stupid Blue Hedgehog's game. DM me to call Rule 34, and I hope to see you again sometime!